Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Drive Pink Dialogue. It is Sunday. We are 24 hours removed from another Inter Miami draw, another frustrating draw. This one, though, felt a lot different, in my opinion, than the previous two. The last two games at Atlanta, at NYCFC, I think we really were happy to get away with a draw in the final minutes because it looked like we were going to lose the game. And then we could just remediate on how frustrating that entire performance was. And then in this game, it felt like Inter Miami had the goal in the last 15 minutes. And instead, we don't get it and we finish with the draw. And that is, of course, frustrating. And so today we're going to do that. We're going to talk about what happened, why it happened. We'll give out some awards, the whole shebang. As always, I'm your host, Scotty. I'm here with my co-host, Saur. How you feeling today, man?
My weekend was going a lot better before I saw that Luis Suárez photo on the thumbnail. My goodness, that hair needs to go. I would prefer him to be bald, honestly, at this point in time, especially with the misses that he had yesterday. He needs to shave that cut off. I'm doing fine, man. I was a little bit disappointed after the game yesterday. I think it was more to do with the result, knowing we were so close to victory and not being able to secure that. And then I took some time, rewatched the game, and I'll be honest, I'm still disappointed. So nothing's changed since yesterday. Looking forward to talking about the game with you and the fans and everyone getting involved. But in the meantime, how are you doing?
I would be doing better if we won last night. Inter Miami does inch closer to the supporter shield. They are still in tremendous shape to get that locked up. In fact, if they win on Wednesday, they will lock it up. But even if they don't, it will still be in their hands for the final two games, in two winnable games at Toronto, and then that final game home versus New England. And so in terms of the bigger picture, I feel fine. I feel good. I feel like we're in the right spot. I felt like last night it was a step in the right direction towards preparing for the playoffs. And yet we still got a 1-1 draw. And I still would have liked to get 3 points because that is what we've become so used to in this game. With this team. And so for me, I agree with you. Frustrating that we didn't get the result, but not as frustrated with the performance. There are, of course, and always things that we can tweak to be better, and we're going to talk about them. We'll talk about some of the performances, and we'll talk about sort of how we set up and why that might not be the way we should set up moving forward. But I thought there was a lot of positive performances from individual players, and so we'll get into all of that. Anything else around Inter Miami's world? I know we'd like to take a few minutes at the beginning to sort of look around the world of Inter Miami or maybe the MLS and sort of discuss things that have happened. I don't have anything on the agenda, but maybe you have something that's on your mind.
No, I was just looking at the league table overall in the MLS, and it just seems like LA Galaxy is the only one that can challenge us out and out now. Which is really interesting because I still remember playing them earlier in the season, and we saw their team and we were like, this team is going to be really good towards the end of the season, and this is a team that's going to get better over the course of the season, and that's exactly what's happened. I'm actually a little bit scared to meet them in the playoffs final if we actually do. But no, just been keeping an eye out on a few results here and there. It seems like everyone did us a little bit of a favor, so we got away with one. But other than that, just seems like we're getting now ready to prepare for the playoffs.
Yeah, just for the record, the Galaxy, really not a threat to Inter Miami. Both of us have 3 games left, meaning 9 potential points. Inter Miami with a 7-point gap. So really, it would be very difficult, and it would take an entire collapse from Inter Miami for the Galaxy to catch us.
It's Columbus. I didn't mean in the sense of supporter shield. I meant more so in the sense of if we meet them in the final. Because they are a team that can really hurt us. So one of the teams to watch out for. And maybe we can do a midweek episode on this, on which teams would we not want to see against us in the final of the playoffs if we ever get there.
Yes, I absolutely agree with you there. I think maybe we should skip the episode because that feels like we're just asking for trouble.
Yeah, too many jinxes.
Exactly, too many jinxes there. And by doing that, we would be talking about all of the potential teams that could upset us. That feels like a recipe for disaster. The big one, though, is Columbus. We play the Crew at Lower.com Field in Ohio on Wednesday night. That's our next game. It is the big one. If Inter Miami wins that game, they clinch the Supporter Shield. Even if they get a draw in that game, it will all but clinch the Supporter Shield. The Crew, if they win, will be 5 points back. They'll have 3 games. Inter Miami will only have 2. So it would still take a pretty big collapse for Inter Miami. But if they got 9 and we got 4, they could catch us, and we'd still probably win on a number of wins. But or I guess we'd be tied there. It could come down to goal differential. It gets tricky, so we should just go out and win that game and feel great about it. Along these lines, the Columbus Crew have dominated MLS conversations a lot this season because they've done particularly well in a number of situations. They're, of course, the defending MLS Cup champions. They won the League's Cup. They went to the final of the CONCACAF Champions Cup, Campeones Cup. And so they have been in and around the conversation for pretty much all this whole season. And they're a very good team, very well coached. But I think it would be fun if Inter Miami clinched and celebrated the Supporter Shield title at Lower.com Field, just because of all of the Columbus Crew themed hate that has come Inter Miami's way, seemingly for no reason this season. But other than that, just a little poetic justice I would like to find. Should we get into this game?
Yes, but before that, I think speaking to that point of poetic justice, it'll also be a good marker for the playoffs to go and clinch it on Columbus's ground, right? And I have a feeling that Tata Martino is accidentally going to stumble across his best lineup and then go out and win that game. So I'm actually excited to see what happens Wednesday and what team we put out. But that's still a ways away. Let's talk about the game that happened yesterday.
Should we spend like 10 minutes at the end talking about that game? Because
yeah, I think so. I think it's going to be an important discussion point, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Going back to last night, though, which is going to be the main topic of this episode, Inter Miami comes out with the 11 you would have expected. Redondo, Gressel, and Yannick Bright in the midfield on paper, a front 3 of Messi, Diego Gómez, and Suárez in the middle, a back 4 of Cello, Aviles, Sergio Busquets, and Jordi Alba with Callender in goal. Not a surprise. I think based on who was available, this was a relatively easy lineup to predict. And yet, it still felt underwhelming, but good enough to get the result. Thinking back on it, now that you've seen the game, do you feel like there should have been a different starting 11? And
yeah, I think so.
Even let's just assume Rojas was not 90 minutes fit. It feels like there was a little more impetus you could have injected into the starting lineup.
We don't need to walk around eggshells on this. This is going to be a talking point until the end of days, till Tata Martino is at Inter Miami. But I don't think Gressel needs to be in a midfield with Redondo and Bright at the same time. That combination just doesn't work, doesn't have the legs to keep up. And we saw that. We saw that with Westwood absolutely running the show in the middle of the park. And that was one area of criticism that I have for this team from yesterday's performance, the midfield. I think when we started this game, the forward line looked very sharp. We seemed to be getting our combinations right. Messi was looking good. Suárez looked involved. And the back line was doing okay. They did threaten us a fair few times, and there were a few nervy moments. But I think a lot of the issues came through the midfield. So, yes, I agree with you. I would have definitely put in Benjamin Kramaski in the middle in place of Gressel. But the formation that Tata Martino is trying to play, I think, is also a point that we need to talk about. The 4-4-2, essentially what we set up in, is not one of my favorites.
No, I agree with you. And I think that's going to be a dominating topic of this conversation. I spent almost the entire rewatch paying special attention to first Julian Gressel and where he was positioning and how he was sort of involving himself in the game. And then when he came off, how Rojas was doing that in a sort of different way and seemingly more impactful. Let's get to the recap because it has been almost 24 hours. So I think a quick run through of what happened might be helpful. And it started off early in the 7th minute. There was a really nice through ball to Messi. I believe it was from Diego Gómez, who sort of bodied off Andrew Privet. And then he had sort of a weak attempt on goal, something that happened again in this game. But it was, I think, at least a good sign for Messi to get in the game, get himself into good position, and then ultimately not the finish he wanted, but I think a positive sign for Inter Miami. Of course, it was Charlotte that really came out beyond that and sort of tried to assert themselves in this game. It culminated in an 18th minute opportunity from Brandt Bronico. He gets the ball at the box, sort of takes a step towards the touchline, and then fires a shot, but it goes into the side netting. And then the last one I wanted to mention in the first half is that 36th minute opportunity where Messi puts a hard, tight, and low shot towards the near post, but it was just wide. Anything from that first half that really caught your eye that you thought was sort of worth recapping?
Yeah, I think one thing that we need to talk about, we should compliment our frontline four, is how good the movement was in front of goal. They seem to be very sharp. Suárez, Gómez, and Messi were making a lot of good runs in behind, were actually finding some good balls. We had some really good opportunities. You've already mentioned two of them from Messi. Suarez was also getting in some good positions. Gómez was finding some good positions, but his final ball always seemed to be a little bit off. Um, but the fact that we were able to put up and unlock the defense of the quality of Charlotte was very promising, because let's be honest, I didn't expect us to have that many chances. We discussed this in the pre-game show, and your scoreline prediction was 1-0. I went with the 3-1, but regardless of that, I didn't think we would get that many opportunities. But it just felt like we knew how to move this backline around, and there was a lot of good run-ins behind. We were getting some good opportunities in front of goal, and that was very promising. But on the other side of things, I was very surprised with how open the game was, because Charlotte seemed to be unafraid to go out a little bit and make a few opportunities of their own. They saw an opportunity in our wing backs pushing up quite high. I feel like Jordi Alba was practically playing like a winger at certain points. There was space in behind there, and they did utilize a lot of those wide spaces to try and catch us on the break or create those opportunities for themselves. First 20-25 minutes, I thought Charlotte was the better team. Then Inter Miami grew into it a little bit, and it could have been 1-1, maybe 1-0 to Charlotte, or even 1-0 to Inter Miami. So it was a very open game, a lot of opportunities for both teams, and promising overall for our offense.
Yeah, I think especially after a little bit of discombobulation in our last game at NYCFC, I didn't think we knew exactly what we wanted to do in that game. It felt much better in this game.
The patterns were back.
Yeah. A much busier second half, though, that is important to say. Speaking of a tame effort, he had a similar one in the 51st minute. A nice Jordi Alba cross to Suárez, who kind of, with his head, lays it off to Messi. But it is sort of a tame effort, and it was his second one of the game. And again, he would have thought he should have done better on that. And then the goal comes for Charlotte, 57th minute. Nathan Byrne with a nice switch to Brandt Bronico, takes a step in and then fires from outside the box. Karol Świderski has a jump up, almost looks like he's trying to avoid it, and then midair decides, you know what, maybe I can redirect this. It kind of hits the bottom of his thigh. Drake Callender going for the save. It's redirected. He has no chance. And so Charlotte, seemingly against the run of play, I felt at that point in the game, grabs the lead 1-0. And this is the catalyst for Inter Miami to really change what was only okay, I thought, from what they were trying to do. And that's when Matias Rojas comes in, Julian Gressel comes out. And I am thankful in a sense that they scored, because we needed something to jumpstart us at this point. And just knowing Tata, it felt like it was going to come 15 minutes later if there was no goal. And instead it comes, 90 seconds later because of the goal. And it pays off almost immediately. There's a Jordi Alba cross to Messi in the 62nd minute, who heads it, but it's sort of right at Christian Kalina. Kalina makes a save on a Alba sort of shot/cross. And then off a corner, Messi finds a swath of unoccupied space in the 67th minute, receives the ball, takes a touch back past Nathan Byrne, and then fires for the goal to tie it. An amazing goal. One of his better goals of the season. I mean, it's from outside the box. When you watch the goal from behind, you can see the vision is clearly interrupted, and he just whips it around like three defenders. Really, really nice goal. And Inter Miami gets back in this game 1-1, and it seems like from that point on had a lot of the momentum.
Yeah, the goal came for Charlotte at a good time for us because it gave us more time to actually react and respond to how Charlotte was playing. I thought it was 50-50, maybe 60-40 to Inter Miami at that point in the game, and a couple of maybe mistakes by our right side of the pitch. I thought Yannick Wright may have been able to do better, but more so Chelo Egan shouldn't have kept that much space on that side of the pitch, allowing Nathan Byrne to have that opportunity to shoot. But as you mentioned, we made the changes, and it felt like Messi was getting there slowly and steadily, getting closer and closer and closer. And he tried it a couple of times to lay off for Jordi Alba over the top, but his passes were slightly off. He tried a couple of shots, got blocked, and then this one was perfectly placed, perfectly angled, and just caressed into the bottom corner. I think it was a beautiful goal, exactly what we needed, and it really uplifted the team because after that we just looked like a team that was going to get the next goal or two.
Yeah, and I think that was my biggest takeaway. We had the momentum and we delivered with a goal, and then we kind of kept the momentum for much of the rest of the game with a few counterattacking opportunities from Charlotte. They did bring on subs at this point. Both Kerwin Vargas and Patrick Agiman come into the game, and I did think they had a positive impact for them. But Inter Miami still felt, for the majority of the rest of this game, in control. The next big moment in the 75th minute, Gómez puts a ball into Suárez. Suárez dumps it back off to Gómez. He takes a touch into the box, gets potentially fouled by Adelson Malanda, and Malanda gets a second yellow card, and it is called a penalty for Inter Miami. Replayed, and VAR goes to look at it, and they call off the penalty, call off the yellow card. He's not kicked out of the game. Any thoughts on that before we move on?
Yeah, I think it was a bit of a one of those where we said if it got given against Aviles, I would have been very, very disappointed because I would have said, oh, he got the ball first. So if you look at it by that metric, it's fine that it got overturned. I think it was the right decision, but it could have gone either ways. Ultimately, he got the ball first, and the referee saw that it wasn't necessarily a rash tackle. It didn't take Gómez out intentionally. So decision was made, but could have changed the game for sure.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of bad refereeing over the last 48 hours, and I will say that was not one that boiled my blood in any sort of way. But of course, as an Inter Miami fan, I would have liked it, them going down to 10 men and us getting a penalty. But like you said, I think I would have been very frustrated if that happened against us. There was an Agiman play a few minutes later where he bodies off Busquets and then creates a goal from first to Lionel Messi, and then he pushes it to Kerwin Vargas. But it was called offsides, but they did have an opportunity to take a 2-1 lead, and it did present the danger they had in transition if they could get out quickly with Inter Miami sort of higher up the pitch. The threat was there, and that was the most dangerous moment, obviously, but still a nervy moment.
And then Agiman's a beast, man. Sorry, but he's an absolute beast, freak of nature, and he's so big and strong, and he just finds these opportunities. But we'll have time to discuss him when we talk about Charlotte in a bit.
Yeah, and then we sort of fast forward into stoppage time. Right as we passed the 90-minute mark, Matías Rojas has what I thought was the game winner as I was watching it live. He takes a step up to sort of an open ball and fires from about 23 yards out maybe. And Christian Kalina is a little surprised by the shot, and he is firmly planted. And if that ball is on target, it is the game winner. And instead, it's about a foot wide. I think even when Rojas hit it, he thought it was perfect. And instead, it is wide and harmless, which for a moment there, I thought that was it. But we had plenty of other chances. Rojas creates another opportunity in the 95th minute with an excellent ball in behind to Campana, who has a sort of point-blank shot. It is his opposite foot, a solid save by Christian Kalina. We don't convert there. And then finally, the big one in the 102nd minute, basically the last moment of the game. Messi with a beautiful cross to the opposite side of the pitch to Jordi Alba, who sort of heads it right down 3 yards in front of goal, inside the 3-yard box, or right there. And Suárez cannot put it in the back of the net. Somehow lifts it above the net. He flubbed it, and Inter Miami gets a 1-1 draw.
Yeah, if you ask him, it was Kalina who actually fouled him, right? That's why he got put off. But I do think he had a completely gaping goal in front of him that he should have just literally tapped the ball in and it would have been a goal. We were trying that pattern for a long time in this game. A fair few times, Messi put that ball out to Alba. Alba had a couple of good knockdowns to Messi, but previously when we tried it, either Messi was crowded out or he had to take a couple of touches, and by that time the opportunity was gone. This time Suárez was in the perfect spot. What a header by Alba, by the way. He put it on a plate for him. And I feel like when he went back to the dressing room, you would have given Suárez a good walloping because that should have gone in. It was a clear goal.
Yeah, listen, I have heard Inter Miami fans bash players on Inter Miami for missing opportunities like that months and even years after missing the opportunity. A says that Suárez makes that 9 out of 10 times. I think he makes that 999 out of 1,000 times. But this was not the one. And of course, as it being the last play of the game, it is a disappointing way to finish with a 1-1 draw. We're going to talk about the tactics in a few minutes. We're going to talk about the, what went right, what went wrong. But just your initial emotional reaction to this, because it felt like it would have been such an amazing opportunity for Inter Miami to right everything. And all we had to do was tap in a shot on goal in the last 30 seconds. And yet we don't get it. So emotionally, how are you after this game?
Yeah, I think that last opportunity really drained out the emotions from me because it took you on a high because we were so close to scoring, especially with that Rojas shot just moments before, and then the Suárez shot going so close to winning the game. And then not winning that game and ending with the draw was really disappointing, and it's almost a punch in the gut in the last minute, and you just go down holding your liver because you were so close to that knockout and to winning that game. But if you take a step back, look at it in terms of the wider picture, we haven't been playing amazingly, but I think this was the best we've looked since Messi's come back. Offensive patterns and structures looked really, really good. Defense was good enough. I think we handled players like Vargas and Adjuman coming off the bench well. Aviles had a good game, barring that one customary yellow card that he always gets. Sergio Busquets was quite solid in that back line as well. I do think there's a case to be made about how high the fullbacks needed to play in that game because that created most of the opportunities for Charlotte. But overall, I thought it was a much more comprehensive performance offensively, and you look at the advanced stats and that agrees completely because we had 21 shots and 3 xg. It should have gone our way, and it was just one of those games where it didn't. And I feel like it was one of those games like we had against New York City FC in the first leg when we were at home, where we had opportunities but just couldn't take it. Or even Montreal was the same kind of game. So it happens. Good to dust off the rust now and get those bad results out of the way so that when we get to the playoffs, it's just win, 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 win.
I think that's a beautiful way to think about it. We might see this team again. They are currently, I believe, 6th in the Eastern Conference. I think it would be a little bit of a tricky path for them to meet us. They'd probably have to pull an upset at some point. But I don't know if I would love to face them. They are a very good defensively. That back four, or really the back six, if you include Kalina and Ashley Westwood, was really good in this game. Even Nathan Byrne was, I thought, really, really good. The central partnership of Malanda and Privet, even adding Tim Ream in there. I mean, exceptional defensively. I almost can't say enough nice things about them because even though Inter Miami had plenty of opportunities, aside from this last one, none of them ever felt like they came easy, and none of them ever felt like, outside the last few minutes, Inter Miami should have scored on them, with a few messy, weak balls as an exception.
Yeah, this team has a brilliant defense. I would not want to go up against them because they're not going to use similar tactics in the playoffs. In the playoffs, you're going to have to beat them 1-0 because they're going to hunker down and they're going to use that defense to lock every single team out. And I won't be surprised if they actually make a deep playoff run if they get there. Their defense is very, very good. Malanda was once again brilliant yesterday. Tim Ream was Tim Ream. I thought he was much better than I would have expected on the left-hand side of the field. I thought we should have exploited him a little bit more, taken him on and utilized his lack of pace, but we just didn't do that. And the one thing that stood out for me for this defense that Charlotte has is they're very good at reading dangers and cleaning up after themselves. So Inter Miami got in good positions, and Gómez was, I think, the biggest victim of this. He got in good positions, but every time he tried to execute that final pass, it just fell down. Not only because he wasn't on top of his game, but because the defense was so well structured.
Yeah, they did a really nice job of making you be perfect in order to beat them. Even the clear-cut opportunities we had, they came from excellent through balls from Rojas or Gómez or Messi doing Messi things. And so in that sense, I wanted to give a hats off to them. And then even going the other way, they have players that can scare you. I don't think anyone that they have on that roster, even the new guys in Biel or Abada or Swiderski, none of them are 15, 20 goals per season scores, but any of them can score on any given night. And then you add Kerwin Vargas and you add Patrick Agyemang. There's some scary players going the opposite direction. And again, if you're so focused on trying to break them down because they're so solid in the back, you're going to leave yourself a little bit exposed, and you have to make sure your defensive players are up for it on the night. So I was really impressed with them last night, and I'm a little surprised they haven't been better this season, at least accumulated more points. But of course, Inter Miami always gets every team's best shot, and that is what we signed up for.
That in itself is a compliment, right? So I don't mind that. I'd like to beat the best at their best, but I was surprised by how good they were offensively as well. They've managed to unlock defense a fair few times. They had a strategy that they knew they wanted to utilize. They used those pockets in behind in our fullback positions and were able to capitalize on those in a couple of opportunities. The goal came through that. I think Agyemang, if he was on from the start, it might have been even worse for us, but we tried to give them everything in terms of going forward. So coming back and recovering on defense was a little bit of an issue today, and I don't think the midfield helped with that either. So we were caught sleeping a fair few times. They had some really good balls coming from the midfield into their front man. Westwood was, I think, the conductor for making that happen, and overall they played much better than I would have expected them to, offensively especially.
Yeah, Ashley Westwood, I think, plays in the type of way that goes understated, but it's so important, and he's really, really good. No one should ever see us play him again and think that guy's a pushover. He is really, really important to what they do. And I thought they had some other guys. Leo Labata had a few dangerous moments. Kerwin Vargas had a few dangerous moments. I didn't mention it, but Vargas had a chance to get the game winner for them late in stoppage time. He sort of puts it wide, but he got himself inside the box with an opportunity to get a clean shot off. I don't know if I want to see them again, if I'm being perfectly honest. We've played them 4 times since Messi's arrived, and we have 5 points in 4 games. I guess we did face them in Leagues Cup, but since the Leagues Cup last year, 5 points in 4 games. Not exactly a sterling record. Should we get into Miami?
Let's do it.
It's a 4-2-4. It's a 4-2-4. They and the 2 outside full midfielders / wingers, Gressel and Gómez, they will sit back into like a 4-4-2 if the other team has sustained possession. But for the most part, they're playing high, trying to make runs in behind, trying to, if you're Gressel, get into positions to be an impact offensively. And in reality, when we are in control of the game, it's Messi that's tucking into the midfield, especially in that first half, more than anyone. That was the first thing I noticed. Gressel is like glued to that right side. Diego Gómez not playing centrally. So it is this midfield duo of Federico Redondo and Yannick Bright that is responsible for so much. And occasionally, especially in the first 25 or so minutes, Messi would drop in possession in order to get on the ball, but certainly out of possession, he doesn't do a ton. So you're basically playing with 2 central midfielders. And I don't like it. I don't like it.
That's been, I think, the setup since the last 5, 6 games now. Whether we were playing the 3-4-3 or whether we were playing the 4-4-2 or even in the 4-2-3-1, it just somehow becomes and morphs into this two-man midfield, which I absolutely despise. You would say 4-2-4. Yes, I'd agree with you. I would go as far as saying in possession view, maybe even playing a 2-4-4, because two centre backs and then
Yeah.
Jordi Alba and Chelo Wigan pushing so high up. I don't even know how they're finding the spaces in, because Gressel, Chelo, Alba, and Gómez essentially playing in the same pockets of space. The biggest issue I have with this setup is that midfield. First, it was the personnel that Tata Martino was putting in the midfield wasn't correct. He decided to solve that by taking a person out of the midfield and was like, okay, we'll just do it too. And that, I think, just puts both Redondo and Bright in so much trouble by themselves in that midfield, especially when you're facing a pacey attack. Thankfully, against Charlotte, they didn't have to face that much of pace, but there were spaces in behind that midfield for Charlotte's front men to operate. Abada had plenty of space to run into. Their striker, Świderski, had plenty of space to run into on the flanks. And normally, if you have a third person in that midfield, which would be Bright, he's able to move in there to cover up and provide a body and do that sweeping role across the width of the pitch. But because it's just him and Redondo, they're not able to cover that much ground. One thing I think after watching yesterday's game, I would even go as far as saying Redondo is suffering from Tata Martino's tactics. I don't think he himself is that bad of a player, or he hasn't been that bad because he's suffering from bad form. I think he's being put in situations where it's not helping him perform well. So completely agree with you that two-man midfield has absolutely zero control. Bright is not a great passer of the ball, which is fine. Redondo, not amazing at passing. He's quite passive and conservative in his passing, goes back to Busquets a fair few times. And there's no metronomic presence in there to try and set the tempo, set the pace. And it's really, really defeating, because we performed really well up top. We performed really well back, in the back. And then the two men in the midfield were absolutely dead on an island.
Do you mind if I plagiarize for a second?
Yes, please do.
There is no commitment to total midfield control. And thanks to whoever said that. Kidding, of course. It's an excellent way to put it. Tata has never seemingly prioritized having a well-balanced, well-structured midfield that controls the game. And it felt like early in the season, we were really good at controlling the midfield when we had the right personnel groupings. But now we've sort of moved past that. And we've gone to this two-man midfield. It's just like you said. I think the last time we played a true 4-3-3 was that Toronto FC game in the Leagues Cup, where we had David Martinez signed, cut off early, or got a red card early, sent off early. Apologies. And so we only got it for about 40 minutes. But before that, the Leagues Cup group stage. It's been a while since we've moved on from this. Clearly he feels, and by he, I mean Tata Martino, feels like with Yannick Bright and Redondo, they can kind of handle the responsibilities. Both players are very young. Redondo is a good passer in terms of he has the ability to make good passes. His vision's not always there. And like you said, he plays conservatively, I think, a lot. He has the ability to play balls like Busquets does in terms of being expansive, but he does it very rarely. And so you could see it, how it would pop up on the highlight reel. It doesn't really pop up in games. He can make a nice run. He does it once or twice a game. That forward pass into Messi, if it's not to Messi, it feels like he doesn't even make forward passes. Yannick Bright tries it. He's going to continue developing that part of his game. But both of these players are 22 years old, and you're putting the entire midfield onus on these two players. And they're getting no help from Diego Gómez. They're getting no help from Julian Gressel, who are playing A, on the wings, and B, way high up the pitch, unless, again, Charlatan sustain possession, in which case they sort of reluctantly come back into shape. And so it's just really tough to control the midfield. And if you can't control the midfield, it's very tough to control sort of the pace of play and the style of the game, and it gives the opposition team the opportunity to implant what they want to do on the game. I thought we saw this a lot early, and this is why Charlotte was comfortable coming out of their shell and sort of playing with the ball, trying to do the things they would normally do to create offense. And it was effective at times for them. And like you said, it was sort of a 50-50 game in that first half. And this was why, because Charlotte felt they could go into that midfield and win the midfield.
Yeah. And again, I think we made their midfield look better than it normally is. And that's because we didn't have enough bodies in there. It was really something that stood out a lot more in this game. Against New York, it was a lot easier to play that two-man midfield. And I would have gone as far to say that you didn't even need Yannick Bright in there. You could have put a more creative-minded midfielder in there because of the size of the pitch. It's much smaller. You don't have to cover that much ground. But when you've got players who are capable of providing a ball, when you do need to throw numbers out there because their defense is so solid, you need more defensive cover in behind. And Yannick Bright, though he's able to do that alone by himself, he can't cover that much space. He can't eat that much ground up. It would have been so simple just putting Gómez back in the midfield. And yes, on paper, you can ask him to get involved on the left-hand side of the pitch, but ask him to come back and defend in the middle when you are out of possession. And just changing the structure up a little bit, setup can be slightly different and the issues in the midfield would go away. And it just seems like a conscious choice on part of Tata Martino to go with this. And that's what really annoys and bugs me, that every time Tata Martino decides to make a different change, it just makes the team much worse. And it's so annoying.
I think the worst part about it is that it feels like it takes about 60 minutes to see this works or doesn't work. And yet it takes 6 games for Tata Martino to sort of come to the same conclusion. Yeah, Chelo Wiegand and Gressel, they don't add or complement each other well at all. And they don't provide much on that right side. I know Lionel Messi likes to come in, but by evacuating that central part of the pitch, it actually feels unnecessary at times, because Messi's so good at operating that actually he doesn't need huge amounts of space, and another body being in there, giving him someone to play off of or to distract with or to pull a defender's attention away. He's so good. He's so smart that he can use that to his advantage. And I think we started to see that in the second half. Whereas if you spend so much time trying to clear that space for him, it gives the defense something to focus on. And then that right side where you are leaving space open, or you're trying to occupy with your own player, right? You're not actually using it in an effective way. Gressel did not have a single cross into the box in this entire game. 60 minutes. And so if he's not doing that, and he's not providing anything in the midfield, and he's not providing openings for other players, he's not providing really anything. And that is not a shot on Julian Gressel. That is a shot on how this team is set up to be successful. And if you are having a player in your starting 11 that's not doing anything, you're just making your team worse. And to do this consistently, and we've seen this exact thing like 2 or 3 times in a row now, is really, really frustrating.
Yeah, and I think I know where you're going with this, but just to foreshadow it a little bit, Gressel stays on the right side of the pitch to create space for Messi in the middle so that Messi can come back, receive the ball when he needs to, and then operate from there. What that does is Messi has the ball in the middle of the pitch, but there's no Busquets for him to play off of. Yannick Bright and Federico Redondo don't have that play style to be able to do that back and forth. Sometimes it comes off, but it's not consistent enough and it's not crisp enough to keep up with Messi's dynamism and what he's trying to do there. So it almost becomes like Messi's trying a little bit too hard himself and becomes a little bit isolated in that middle of the pitch. If you put in a little extra body there, I don't think that's going to clog up the pitch, as you mentioned. I think it's just going to give another outlet for Messi to play off of. That's exactly what happened when Matthias Rojas came on the pitch. He didn't operate in the right side of the pitch. He stayed central, allowed Chelo Wiegand to go more deep on the right side of the pitch. And that, I think, gives you a lot more options, because then you don't have 2 players playing a very similar role with Wiegand and Gressel trying to occupy the same spaces up the top on the right-hand side. Matthias Rojas stays central. It automatically gives you a lot more options to play. Messi passes the ball into him, makes a run somewhere. Rose can choose to pass it into Messi or give it off to someone like Campana in this instance, which happened, I think, in the last few minutes of the game. And that's how you develop those patterns. I feel like Tata Martino's setup from the start of the game was a little bit off, and it made us struggle more than we should have.
I will say, in the second half, or rather when Rojas came in, he was clearly given the same instructions as Julian Gressel. I watched this very closely, and he was also asked to go play out on that right wing and occupy those spaces. It's just that his play style calls for him to come centrally because that's just how he likes to play, and not stick out there and trying to, play that sort of old school winger where you get to the byline and whip and crosses. He's much more of a modern, inverted winger that likes to do those types of things. And so he finds those spaces. It helps your midfield, even though it's not really his role. It helps because he's then in a different spot when you lose possession, etc. And then he's so good in the build-up because he's coming centrally to help, not to help, but just because that's his play style, that I think it's just much more effective. But the reason I mentioned that it was still his instruction to stay out there, because he was consistently getting back there, especially for the first few minutes, was that this is what Tata wants, right? It wasn't just trying to fit Gressel in. This was his strategy. And it really took Rojas saying, I'm not finding the game here. I just watched Gressel struggle here for 60 minutes. I need to find the game in a different way in order to have an impact, and him just going out of his way to sort of have that impact. And I thought he was really good in that regard. So I'm still not that confident in what we're set up with here. And I think what we do on Wednesday night is going to be very telling, very interesting. And I'm very interested to see what we come out with.
Yeah, and the problem is Tata brings out these weird tactics, these weird setups at the wrong time. Like, just go back to the basics. You don't need to experiment so much. The problem is he wants to get his best players or his favorite players on the pitch, and he's trying to do that at the expense of how this team should set up and how well this team should play in a very regular, simple 4-3-3. And that's what annoys me the most. You can clearly see that Gressel has a specific play style which suits the team when certain players are not available and are not on the pitch. With Messi, I don't think Gressel fits the mold. You need somebody who can play off Messi, who can play a little bit more centrally, who can defend when he needs to. I thought Rojas was a lot better defensively than Gressel was. And it just, it doesn't play off well. And the problems that we are creating are self-created. That's the biggest issue. And in a way, that's also optimistic of me to say that, because it means we can fix it ourselves. Chris Henderson and the rest of the management just need to put you and me in charge of the coaching, right? That's all they need to do.
Is it possible that Tata's actually a mad genius, and then he was just putting this on film in preparation
100%.
for this Columbus Crew game, where he's going to throw an absolute bomber of a 4-man
100%.
midfield? We're just going to control that middle pitch part of the pitch.
I told you at the very start of this podcast that Tata Martino is accidentally going to stumble on his best starting 11 and have the best performance against Columbus that we've seen thus far. That's how it's going to work.
I'm trying to figure out what else I want to talk about, because I feel like there's a lot of conversations here that actually we can save for when we get to awards. But this midfield question, it's just every game. It's just consistent. It's the same.
Are you tired
over and over
about this?
I am tired of watching it. I'm tired of seeing what's wrong and having what feels like very simple response and answer to it, and then just it continuing. I guess I wonder, do you think Tata feels like with Messi and Suárez both on the pitch and sort of the lack of activity they have when we're out of possession, you would feel like you would be more inclined to sort of set up his midfield for success and set up his defense for success. And instead, it feels like the opposite. It feels like he needs to do more to support them in a way that doesn't always feel productive, but it's just him throwing things out there. I guess my last question is, 31 games in, we have 3 games left this regular season. Yes, we go play at Columbus on Wednesday, but beyond that, we have 1 game next weekend and then 1 game after the international break before the playoffs. That's not a lot of time to tinker. It's not a lot of time to toy around with things. Are we going to be going into the playoffs feeling like we have a set system, or are we going to be potentially surprised with what we see in that first game?
Set system is what I'm inclined to say. Set system that Tata Martino has in his mind, because he's not drifted away from this. We've generally played a similar sort of a play style in the last 5-10 games as this. That 2-man midfield, sometimes 3-man backline. But with Messi coming back, it's always been him and Suárez up top with that 4-2-4. I think that's the general makeup of this team. I don't think we deviate away from that come the playoffs, and it's not going to solve itself. We're going to have to hope that Tata Martino makes the right changes in game for us to take control as and when it happens. But I think this is the general setup that we're going to go with, and we need to be used to it as fans.
I don't know what to. I don't know what a response to that should be.
Very pessimistic. I'm really sorry.
Part of me thinks you're right, and is scared of that, because it would be such an absolute shame if we don't go into these playoffs again as the Supporter Shield winners in all likelihood. If we don't go into these playoffs feeling like we're the favorite and feeling confident, having all these home games and feeling like this is ours to lose, but instead hoping that we put out the right setup, we have the right personnel, right? Hoping that we are able to overcome whatever team comes in front of us in whatever particular game, because we don't have that sort of confidence in what we're doing. And it's wild to say, because we are the Supporter Shield champions. With that said, it was a much better performance than what we had the previous 2.5, 3 games, really. That Philadelphia game, we won 3-1, but I think there was a lot to be concerned about. And certainly on the road, I think we were the worst team in both of those games, even though we did come out with draws. We were the better team in this game, and I don't want that to go unstated. 3 XG, right? We should have scored 3 goals, or at least 2. Double the expected goal count as Charlotte. 21 shots compared to 9 for Charlotte. 4 big chances that we missed all of them, versus compared to 1 for Charlotte. And I think
2
Charlotte
of them
actually
for Messi as well. So
2 of them from Messi, 1 from
no.
Actually, Messi only had 1 by the statistics. But I guess my point is 60% possession. Inter Miami was really good, and I think if we put aside the fact that Suárez missed the sitter at the end and Messi had a few chances early and the midfield wasn't special, it was still a good performance. And I don't want to leave this conversation without reaffirming that this was a step in the right direction. And I want to make sure that we all understand that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the disappointment was not because we played poorly. It was because genuinely everyone thought we were going to win that game by how it was going in the second half and how close we actually came to scoring. I'm pretty sure if you were there in Suárez's position, even you would have buried it. I would probably have missed, but it was quite a close call, and it's fine to not win it's fine to not win even if you've created the chances. But if you've not created the chances, that's where we'd have an issue. So yesterday's game was more about creating all those opportunities, actually having some really good patterns of play. Offensively, we looked dangerous in large parts of the game. So one-off evening for our strikers, and any other day we would have got 4 or 5 against this team. So it is what it is. We just have to take the positives and move on.
Yeah, and again, I think we have to make a statement about that, because we were very critical of the performances over the last few games, and even though the result didn't really change, the performance definitely did, and that is positive. And I think that should, at least for us fans, give us a little bit of confidence going into Wednesday night. Are you ready for awards?
Yeah.
Okay, so I went first last time, which means it's your turn to go first. On this show, we give out 6 awards: a Inter Miami Man of the Match, a Heron that flew north, and 2 individual awards each. Who is Miami's Man of the Match?
I'm going to give my Man of the Match to the one, the only, the superstar of this team, Luis Suárez, for his fantastic contribution. Now, it's going to be Lionel Messi. It has to be Lionel Messi. Will always be Lionel Messi when he gets on the pitch and plays the way he did yesterday. I thought he looked closest to the best form that we've seen from him in the last 3-4 games. He had some fantastic opportunities, didn't take them particularly well, but was getting into good spaces. He was very sharp to even get to some of those balls that he did. I think last couple of games he took some time to get up to speed. This time it felt like he was on it from get go. His dribbling was on point, and then the finish was absolutely sublime. You could see it coming from miles away when he took that ball in that pocket, took a little bit of a dribble, and then shot it. You could just see it going straight into the bottom corner. That was beautifully done. Very much the catalyst of our comeback draw. Feel like he could have dragged us out and got us the win if not for Luis Suarez's miss. And I think he was the main focus of our offense, as always is the case. And this time around, I feel like he's finally getting back into shape to be able to get back to his best.
Yeah, not only does he get the goal, he gets the would have got the hockey assist on the final goal for Luis Suarez. Puts in an excellent cross to Jordi Alba, who heads it right down for Luis Suarez. And so he would have been largely responsible for both goals. Shoot or shoot, man. If you're a basketball player and you're a shooter and you miss a few shots, you just keep shooting because you know it's going to come. And I think Messi needed that in this game. He was, I think, par or maybe slightly below par in his first few games back, especially the last two. And so to really blossom back into what he was, I thought there was a continuation coming into this first half. Found a few good opportunities, but sort of tame attempts on goal. But he was more aggressive, and he decided, I am going to get on the score sheet today. In the second half, especially when Rojas came on, really decided I'm going to take this game over. Created a lot of opportunities, was very aggressive, had the sort of Messi impact, was able to dribble through a couple guys. Really, really impressive showing. And so I agree 100%, man. Shoot or shoot. And when it comes, it starts to come in bunches. So I'm very excited for what Lionel Messi is and what he's going to be on Wednesday night.
And I will say he played against Philadelphia after a long layoff from injury, scored 2 goals. But yesterday he only scored 1, and he looked better yesterday than he did against Philadelphia. So he's definitely getting match fit, getting sharp, and I'm very excited to see what flavor of Messi we get to see in the playoffs, because I have a feeling he's going to be very close to perfect.
I want you to know I'm desperately afraid of this international window because he's going to go back with Argentina, and I think I would be broken as a person if he got hurt somehow. Okay. Heron that flew north. This is the award.
Man. You just jinxed it, man.
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay.
I don't know what you're talking about. What things? I don't know. The Heron that flew north. This is our second award. We give this out every game. It's our award for the player who was doing the wrong thing. Florida Herons, they don't fly north for the winter. They don't fly anywhere for the winter. So if you catch a Florida Heron flying north, you are catching them do the wrong thing. And in this game, I actually thought there was not a ton of great choices. I know we talked about Julian Gressel not being incredibly involved. I thought Diego Gómez had a number of opportunities getting into that final third where and it accounted for, where he didn't really have the right final ball. And I give some of the credit to Charlotte because I thought they were really good in being in the right spot at the right time. But to me, it has to go to Luis Suarez. I thought he was better the second time I watched the game. Throughout most of the game, I thought he was classic Luis Suarez. Didn't really have any tremendous opportunities that he missed until the final 30 seconds when he had a tap in to win the game, and he missed it. And so that is the definition of doing the wrong thing. I have to give it to Luis Suarez.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. There were a couple of options. You could have maybe given it to Gressel, as you mentioned. Gómez, maybe not as much, but Luis Suarez, man, you have to make somebody the scapegoat for this draw, and he was the biggest one. If you hadn't given him the Heron that flew north, I would have had a award for him. I would call it the Walmart George Clooney Award for his haircut, because didn't necessarily do too well in front of goal yesterday. He was okay. He was a large part of our movement up top that I mentioned. He was good offensively, trying to create those spaces, but didn't look the same threat that Messi and Gómez were offering going forward. He was there. He was doing Luis Suarez things, and when the moment came for him to actually deliver and pull the trigger, he missed by a mile. So quite a bad miss. So I'm completely on board with you on this Heron that flew north award. But Luis Suarez is one of those players that you can't necessarily fault for missing a game winning goal one day, because the next day he's just going to go out and score 3 goals. So
Absolutely.
if this was someone like Campana or Robert Taylor, I would have been like, okay, maybe, it might hurt their confidence, might affect them a little bit. All we know, next game, Luis Suárez is going to go out against Columbus and put on an absolute show. Hopefully that's the case, but I'm not worried for Luis Suárez in any way. He's obviously still on pace to potentially be the highest goal scorer in MLS this season. Just one of those games where he missed a few.
Just to add a few numbers to this, 1.4 expected goals for Suárez. That is a very high number to have 0 goals. That is on 4 shots. He had 2 big chances and he missed both of them, according to sort of the advanced analytics. So, I actually do think this is well deserved beyond just that one opportunity at the very end. Let's hear your first award.
All right. So my first award is called the Toxic Relationship Award.
The Toxic Relationship Award is going to go to Julian Gressel because he and Tata have a toxic relationship where Tata Martino forces this poor man to go play every single game, run him into the ground. I mean, he started more games than Drake Callender this year. That is toxic. And he doesn't even let him go to the spa.
You've not well, once a season. That's the contract. Once a season. You've not only nailed the person, you've nailed the explanation as well. So very well done to you on that. But yes, I do think Gressel is a victim of Tata Martino's tactics, much like a couple of other players on this team as well. I would say Redondo is in a similar position. Sometimes maybe Chelo Wigan. But largely, I think Gressel is the manifestation of what Tata Martino is trying to do and why it's not working. He's putting him in positions that he's not comfortable playing outright. He recognizes, I think, that Gressel's best position is on the right-hand side of the pitch. That's why when we're playing this formation with the 2-man midfield, he asks Gressel to push all the way wide, even when Messi's on the pitch. But within that, I think now that Messi is back, we don't necessarily utilize Gressel's strengths because that's not our play style. We don't use crosses into the box to Suárez. We instead play through the middle and try to create through tiki-taka football. And it's just a shame that Julian Gressel is constantly put in a position for him to suffer, because then it leads to guys like us talking bad about him, when I think he's a phenomenal player when he's put in the right positions. He had this great stretch of games where he contributed so much to the team and I would say was undroppable. But you can now see once again that we've gone back to the patterns that we saw at the start of the season. And Julian Gressel is once again being chastised for not putting up the performances that we saw from him in the middle of the season. So toxic relationship, hopefully he can get out of it. If he needs the number of somebody to break up, like somebody to help him break up, I can definitely give him your number so that you can talk him through it. Yeah.
Well, me and him have the same barber, so I think I can get that
fair
a
enough.
little easier.
Yeah.
Julian Gressel is a good player. Julian Gressel has been asked to play out of position, and he's been asked to play in a role that suits him but doesn't suit the rest of the 11. And you mentioned all 3 of those things. And I think that's sort of the story on Julian Gressel right now. I think when he comes off the bench, we've seen it rarely, but when we have seen it, he is able to find the game quickly, and I think he's able to have a positive impact. And I think that's the role he's going to have come playoff time. We'll see. I mean, we'll see what the health situation looks like. But yeah, I'm sympathetic towards Julian Gressel because he's a good player that is not being put in a position to succeed. And it's coming at the cost of sort of the overall 11, I think. And that is unfortunate for Julian, but also a fact for Inter Miami. Do you think he starts on Wednesday night? I think you're on mute, but
yes, he does
yes.
start. Yeah, that was a massive yes. Of course, no doubt in my mind.
I don't think he's going to start on Wednesday.
Now, every time you ask me for the predicted lineup, Julian Gressel is the first name on the team sheet, even before calendar, because I just know he's going to start. Yeah, maybe he doesn't start this Wednesday because there might be a case to be made that Tata Martino rotates. He has shown his desire to rotate in the middle of the week when we play Wednesday games. So maybe he doesn't. And given Rojas' performance and the need for him to get up to match speed, he might be given the go-ahead in that position this time around. But yeah, it's a confusing one. Tata Martino is a confusing coach.
Okay, next award. And I am giving the I've got a couple that I like. I don't love any of the awards, but I think we have to talk about these players. I'm giving the Electric Bull Rider award.
Ooh.
And I hate myself for giving this award, but it's already been done and I can't take it back now.
The Electric Bull Rider. So the Electric Bull Ride you get at bars, especially in country bars, where you ride the bull and it goes round and round and you go like that, and then you can increase the speed and it goes worse, and then you can increase the speed further and you have to hang on until you fall off. Interesting. I'm going to give this award to Diego Gómez because I feel like Diego Gómez is that electric bull rider who stayed on till the very end, but at the last moment, the ride just got too hard for him and then he fell down.
It does go to Diego Gómez. You know, I think you explained the situation quite well. You go out and you have a few drinks and you think, I can do this. I'd be exceptional at this. And so you get on there. Granted, I've never done this, so I'm only imagining.
Sure.
But you get out.
Never done this.
That is a fact. But anyways, you get on there and you actually do really well. Like, you're surprisingly good, right? Because you have a strong core and you have good grip and you do much better than all your friends. And you think to yourself, I'm really good. And everyone around you thinks he is much better at this than I was expecting. That doesn't make you a cowboy. That doesn't mean you'd actually ride a real bull. Doesn't make you an outlaw. It doesn't make you fight in the 1880s Civil War movies. Not Civil War movies, but post-Civil War movies.
Westerns.
Thank you. Sorry. I'm losing everything. I'm embarrassed to give this award, and it's just totally thrown off my mindset. He's not a left winger. He's a midfielder. He's not a left winger. He's a midfielder. And we saw the few touches when he was in and around the box, they didn't come off. And that's fine. He's been a very good left winger. But he's a midfielder. And you don't want someone who goes into a bar and rides an electric bull at the rodeo. You want a cowboy. And so let him be the cowboy in the midfield where he is the best box-to-box midfielder in the league. Just let him do that, please. I don't know why we have just shoehorned Diego Gómez up as a forward player when he's the best number 8 in the league. I hate it. And we saw him back in the midfield about 7 minutes in last night's game. And it was after, in the last 7 minutes of the game before he came out. He's a midfielder. We have not controlled the midfield. He is an absolute wrecking ball to opposition midfields. It all comes together to make sense. He's a good rotation piece when Robert Taylor needs a break or when Matías Rojas doesn't want to start at left wing. But he's a midfielder. Get him in the midfield. I hate that we are still having this conversation, and I really want to see him in the midfield.
Guys, take a shot every time Scotty says he is a midfielder. But I agree with you, and I'll be honest, I like this award. This is a great award, very creative and very poignant to what you're trying to express here. I will say I have ridden a mechanical bull. It is very difficult to stay on, and good for Diego Gómez if he can stay on till the end. But you're right, he is definitely not someone who should be at the rodeo because he needs to be in that middle of the park for Inter Miami. A makes a very good point here. Gómez passed from the midfield to Messi, where he had that one-on-one opportunity that he sort of scuffed, was created from the midfield. He was able to deliver that ball straight from the midfield.
Centrally too. Central midfield.
Central midfield. And all the issues that we're talking about leaving a two-man midfield with Bright and Redondo and not having a third presence in there, simple solution, bring Diego Gómez into the midfield. I gave him the silent firecracker award because I thought he was very good up until the point of explosion, because he exploded but didn't make any sound. So it's like you're getting 95% of Diego Gomez by playing him in the left wing spot. You can actually get 110% of Diego Gomez by putting him in the middle of the park. I actually miss those days where Redondo and Gomez was absolutely tearing up the midfield, getting those turnovers high up the pitch. And I think there's a case to be made that we can play that style or that combination even with Messi and Suarez on the pitch. So Tata Martino, for God's sake, figure out your combinations and try and understand what the best thing for this team is, because Diego Gomez, again, one of those players that's suffering. Actually, he's not suffering because he's performing well on the left wing side, but he can just be phenomenal in the middle of the park. So why would you play him on that side? And then I guess this conversation also sort of leads us to Robert Taylor and what his role is on this team, because I would say Robert Taylor deserves more opportunities than he's been given, and is just really surprising that yesterday he didn't even come on yesterday, did he? So I don't even know what to talk about that.
I don't want to make this about Robert Taylor because I think there's an equal case that it should be Matthias Rojas.
Yeah,
of
course.
It's not even about the left wing spot. It's about the midfield. He is the best box to box midfielder in the MLS, and you are struggling in the midfield. You're putting the best box to box midfielder take another shot at left wing when your midfielder is struggling, and he's a fine left winger. But most of the things he does from the left wing, he can do by making those runs out of the midfield that surprises the opposition defense. Early in the season, we saw him come through sort of unopposed or unguarded because he was a runner out of the midfield. And Messi found him past the back line, and he was able to get a nice opportunity and scored a few goals. Like, that still exists. Everything he does going into the final third can still exist from the midfield. He's a box to box. He's going to move forward into the opposition box and still be a threat. But if you play him up top or if you stick him all the way out on that left side of the pitch, he can't be that disruptor in the midfield. And that was the thing I was most excited for when he came back. And we haven't seen it once. And he's so good at that I want him to do that. And now I feel the desperation coming out of my voice. But that's what I want.
Guys, I think we need to give Scotty a hug because he really wants Diego Gomez in the middle of the park. Yeah, and just one last point in this. I feel like yesterday he wasn't good defensively because he wasn't able to cover defensively on the left-hand side, and there was a lot of space in behind him for Charlotte to exploit. So it just takes away so many of his attributes when he's playing on that left-hand side, and I don't enjoy it too much. But anyways, on to the next.
Well, I actually have a few more points on here before we go. Something that I was sort of thinking over the last couple weeks is that I do wonder if part of this agreement with Brighton for him to stay through the rest of the season is for him to play more in that front line as a left winger to help him build that part of his game so that when he does go to the Premier League, he's more experienced going forward and has a little bit more versatility. That has been on my mind. I hope it's not the case because I am, again, desperate to see Diego Gomez back in the midfield, but that is on my mind. And then, it's not, again, I see some comments about Robert Taylor or whatever, but it's not about who goes at left wing. I would be happy to have someone less at left wing if it meant you dominate the midfield, which is what Diego Gomez hopes you do. So,
and which is where Miami is struggling.
Right. Okay. What is your second award?
My second award for the evening is the Carbon Compound Award. And this is going to test your chemistry skills.
The Carbon Compound Award, obviously, goes to Matthias Rojas because he and Lionel Messi have that chemistry.
You're an absolute fire, my friend. You're an absolute fire today. Yes, it goes to Matthias Rojas, but there are a couple of points to this. As you mentioned, him and Lionel Messi have some really good chemistry. We saw that against Red Bull when they absolutely stole the show in the middle of the park. We saw that a little bit of it yesterday as well. Matthias Rojas changed the game by allowing Lionel Messi to have those combinations up there. But he's also, much like the Carbon Compound, he can make a bond with basically every other element out there. Carbon is very, very good at forming bonds with other elements, and I feel like Matthias Rojas can play in multiple positions for this team and offer us a lot more. He's basically a Swiss Army knife. He can play, I think, on the right wing side. He can play in the middle of the park. And there's a case to be made that he can play on the left wing side as well. Put him in there, play him a little bit more. I would have initially thought that his role on this team would be more off the bench. But given how effective he can be in certain situations, I want to see more of him. And over the next 3 games, I want to see him start at least 2 of them.
I just realized he's not going to start. I was convinced up until just now that he was going to start on Wednesday and that Julian Gressel was not going to start on Wednesday. And now I think Julian Gressel is going to start and Matthias Rojas isn't, because
Why do you say
exactly what you said. When he comes off the bench, he can change games. He is not just a weapon coming off the bench, but he's a game changer. And we've seen this multiple times this year. I don't want to see that, but now I'm kind of convinced that that's what Tata's going to do. He's so good. He's got that sort of natural chemistry with Lionel Messi, and it does sort of combine with Jordi Alba and Busquets and Suárez as well. Like, he has this technical ability and ability to go both ways, and just he's so smart and technical that it plays well off of these other guys that are ultra technical in a way that, Kramaski doesn't and Diego Gómez doesn't quite do. And so I totally agree there. One thing I'm thinking about, especially when I'm talking about putting him at that left wing opposite Messi, is we oftentimes see a free-flowing sort of front 3 from Miami. It's not stagnant. And I do wonder what Matthias Rojas would look like there in a free-flowing role, where maybe he does watch Messi come centrally and he flips the side of the field and has Messi play as sort of a central second striker, false 9 type of player, not a false 9, but a second striker. And he comes onto that right side and whips in and kind of whips in and gets those shots off. And then maybe he drifts back to the left side to find the game and to create more space and to combine with Jordi Alba. Like, it feels like real possibilities with what Matthias Rojas can do if we don't pigeonhole him into responsibilities that other players should be doing. Going back to Diego Gómez, you put Gómez back in the midfield, it opens up a forward spot and it makes your midfield better, that you can put Matthias Rojas in. And he has shown that he has the chemistry from from both wing spots, less on the left, more on the right. But that's just because he hasn't played much on the left, where he can really impact the game. And so that's what I want to see on Wednesday night. Give me Matthias Rojas on the left, Messi on the right, Diego Gómez in the midfield.
Take a shot. And that's why he is the carbon compound of this team, who can basically add to every single other player on the pitch. We saw that with the Campana pass that he made as well. If Campana scored that would be phenomenal play from him. So completely agree with you. I don't think I have anything else to add to this. The only other question would be whether Rojas can still go the 90 minutes. But coming back from injury, I think he's going to take a little bit of time getting up to speed. But he looked good, man. He looked good after being off on the sidelines for a bit. So I do think he's going to be a major role player in the playoffs.
I have 2 awards left. I'm not sure which one I want to give. Neither are good. By the way, my Matthias Rojas award was also chemistry related, but yours was definitely better. So I applaud you for that. I'm going to give the sympathetic character award.
The sympathetic character award obviously goes to Federico Redondo.
What makes you say that?
I mean, it just feels like yesterday he had a good game, but he wasn't necessarily at his best, but because he didn't have other players around him to support him. And that's why you sympathize with him. And he is the sympathizing, or whatever the award was. Sorry, I forgot.
The sympathetic character. Is this the first time we've both guessed both right?
I was gonna say I had so much pressure on me like 30 seconds ago to actually guess this one, and I'm glad I did. So well done to the both of us.
If I had given the side quests award, would you have known who that was going to?
Jordi Alba?
No, it's the sympathetic character award. We're sticking there. I have been probably as critical as anyone of Federico Redondo. I feel like he has struggled to find the game a lot. I don't love his defensive positioning, and I don't think he offers as much sort of in that Busquets style as people thought he does. Even though you see it in glimpses, it's not really consistent. But I thought he was really good yesterday. and he's being asked to do something that is very, very difficult. And his partner in Yannick Bright is being asked to do the same thing, and it's very, very difficult. The two of them, I thought, were in the role they had, very solid, and I thought Redondo was even probably a bit better. And so I thought he was really good, and I had to give him an award because of how critical I've been. He had a good performance, and he deserves to be praised for it. And I'm sympathetic of him because he's being asked to do something that's very, very difficult to do as he's trying to adjust to this league and to this team. And so I'm proud of his performance yesterday and him for sticking to it. And I'm sure he doesn't even speak enough English to listen to this podcast, but if he does, Fede, I'm proud of you.
Yeah, there are definitely glimpses of a good player there. And we have criticized him recently for his lack of performances, especially that one performance where he came off the bench. I've forgotten what performance that was. He didn't play particularly well.
That was Atlanta.
There you go, Atlanta. But yeah, yesterday he was on point, did some very good things. Unfortunate that he went up against a midfield that was playing really well yesterday with Westwood and I think it was Urona. I'm not sure how you pronounce the other team's name. But him and Yannick Bright yesterday looked much better than they had in recent weeks. He did some good things. I still want more from him, but I do think he's doing exactly what Tata Martino is asking him to do. That's why he continuously starts in that role. So in that sense, if he's being asked to do a certain thing and he's doing it, he's playing really, really well. So I hope that we can see the best of his performance.
And again, go ahead. Well, he's coming off what I thought was his two worst performances in a long time. Really bad against Atlanta off the bench, and then at NYCFC, he was the guy that was supposed to make the game, and he didn't. And so coming off of those two performances, I thought that was a tremendous step in the right direction for him.
And it's I think, a clear instruction that he needs to be slightly deeper to help out with the build up when we're in possession. And then when we're out of possession, Yannick Bright takes over as the sole conductor in the midfield, trying to get those interceptions and running after the ball. So there seems to be some connection building up there. Overall, he did well. One thing I do want to see better from him is his progressive passing. He is very conservative and reserved in his passing, and he turns back a fair few times when there are opportunities around him to actually put people into space. So he needs to maybe get better at that, but definitely an improvement from what we've seen recently. So good for you for giving him that award.
Yeah, and I think defensively is where we've been very critical of him, and you talked about him being sort of deeper, and that's what he's being asked to do. And I have not thought that's where his strengths lie as a midfielder. And so in that sort of realm and context, I thought he had a good performance. So I wanted to give him that award. I'm just going to run through a couple other names. Just stop me if you have anything you want to talk about. Drake Callender, Cello Wiegand, I thought was fine.
Mm-hmm.
Toto Aviles gets the yellow card. I should have given him an award. He's gotten a yellow card in 4 straight games. He'll be suspended for Wednesday night's game against Columbus. That will be his 6th suspension of the season, which is crazy.
Tell me this: if he gets a yellow card in the game against Toronto, does he get suspended for the New England game?
I don't think he gets suspended. No, because you need 2 yellow cards to get a suspension. But I don't know if he gets a yellow card in both the Toronto and the New England game, if he'll be suspended for the first game of the playoffs.
Yeah.
I would imagine he probably will be.
You know what this reminds me of? When Neymar always used to get injured in January because it was his sister's birthday. That was the joke as it went. It feels like Aviles has something in his contract that says he cannot play 3 consecutive games, so he has to take a yellow card to sit one out. It's just bizarre, man. Absolutely bizarre. We're gonna laugh our heads off when the season ends.
And in the context of his yellow cards, I thought it was kind of a weak yellow card. Trying to body up Patrick Agyemang, and it's just sort of a unlucky fall. But can I ask you a question? If we win Wednesday night in Columbus, would you not play him in Toronto because you don't want him to get back-to-back yellow cards in the final 2 games of the season?
Yeah, rest him till the end. Put him on ice till the end of the season, and then bring him back in the playoffs. You
would still have that opportunity in New England to sort of freshen him back up before the playoffs start. But I would just assume he's going to get a yellow card every single game. And we've made this joke for the last 3 games, and it just keeps happening.
And
And
it's also interesting to see if all the yellow cards get reset at the start of the playoffs, but knowing MLS, that's probably not the case.
we have to go back to, I believe, the Columbus Crew game in the Leagues Cup for the last time that Toto Aviles, actually, I think he may have been suspended for that game. I don't even want to say anything without being sure. I had something, but I forgot it. Drake Callender, Busquets, I had an award for him. He's just completing side quests at this point. He's amazing as a center back. I hope we get David Martinez and Aviles are able to partner in the playoffs, but I'm so confident and comfortable with Busquets in the back line. I would prefer him in the midfield, but I'm so comfortable. Jordi Alba could have had the game-winning assist. I mean, he had some assist-worthy moments that just didn't come off. Yannick Bright,
think he was phenomenal going forward, but poor in defending. But that's just Jordi Alba, right? You don't expect him to be defensively that strong, anyways.
Yeah. Gómez. I'm sorry, not Gómez. Yannick Bright, solid. Same thing as Redondo. It's just he's been more consistently good, I think. But I thought he had a solid performance. A couple poor giveaways in the first half, but sort of, I think both times made up for it with an interception. And then I just feel so much more comfortable with him sort of against defensive transitions. And then Campana, he had an opportunity in the final moments, not nearly as clear cut as what Luis Suárez had, but his right foot, so his off foot from point blank range, can't put it past Christian Kalina. So I think you have to at least mention that. And then Frey Ruiz Kermaski played a couple minutes. I didn't think had any noteworthy moments. Should we talk about this Columbus Crew game?
Yeah, let's give it 2 to 3 minutes.
What do you want to see?
Oof. I want to see a full strength Inter Miami go absolutely batter Columbus Crew in the next game. That's not going to happen. So instead, I want to see a solid Inter Miami team, a well-constructed Inter Miami team with a good midfield balance that goes up against this Columbus team and shows exactly what it's capable of by going toe-to-toe, not hunkering back, not sitting back and defending and catching them on counter, not trying to scrape a victory out of the thin air, but instead actually going and competing and playing their style and trying to dominate the ball. The good thing about the Charlotte game was, yes, we were slightly defensively vulnerable, but we were taking our opportunities going forward and trying to create those forward opportunities. That's exactly what I want to see against Columbus as well. Allow the football to flow through the team rather than struggle to get the ball or struggle to keep possession. And I know it starts with the tactics and then the setup and then the personnel and then exactly what happens on the pitch. But we need to get all those variables right to be able to get something out of the Columbus game. And yes, the result is really important, but I'm going to be looking out for just as much the performance as much as the result.
It is possible that Inter Miami goes there and dominates, right? Messi could score 2 and Suárez could score 2 and we win that game 4-1. That's possible.
That should be the ideal case scenario because this is how the team should be playing.
Right. I don't want to say that this has to be a dogfight, but I'm going to compare this to our games against Monterrey early in the season. That first leg, we did not have Lionel Messi. We played very conservatively at home, and we were on the way to getting a 1-0 victory until David Ruiz gets a red card. But we played very well. I thought we set up how we needed to win. And it was a very similar idea when we played Columbus at home in June. We didn't have Messi. We didn't have Suárez. We played very conservatively, but we hit them on the counter. We had a few turnovers high at the pitch. We scored a couple goals, and we got out of there with a 2-1 win. But going back to this Monterrey example, we get Messi back, and we try and play this hugely expansive style, and we are playing that 3-5-2, which made me want to throw up, and we got our doors blown off in Monterrey. And even though we had Messi back, and we had built ourselves up over the week, in the week between, there's if we get Messi back, we have a chance, right? And we got Messi back, but Tata played a style that never gave us a chance. I need to know if that's going to be the case against Columbus. I need them to play the expansive style with Messi on the pitch, with our full available roster, setup, complement of players that we have available. They have to go try and dominate this game the way they want to know if we can. Because if they can't, if it ends up being just like it was against Monterrey on the road, where that setup doesn't work, then if you face Columbus again, you have to play that conservative style and hit them on the counter and win that way. Because if you give up Wednesday night's game and rotate 8 players and say we're playing for the Toronto game, you are not going to find out whether that works or not. And if you have that same performance that we had at Monterrey against Columbus in the playoffs, Tata will have to be fired, because that was entirely on Tata. He has an opportunity right now, on Wednesday night, to see what he has against the Columbus Crew. He has to go 100% out there to win this game exactly like he would in the playoffs, because that will tell him whether he has the team to play his style or not. I know it'll be a little bit different in the playoffs because we'll be at home, but this is the testing ground. Go prove you're good enough or prove you're not good enough, but find out. He has to play his best 11, or what he thinks is his best 11, on Wednesday night. If he does, I'm so excited, because as a fan, it's going to be a really exciting game, and I think everyone should be really hyped about it. And I'm sure our pregame show is going to be the most excited we've been since the last Columbus game, when we were in the Leagues Cup and we were the defending champions and all that. I'm so excited for it, but I am nervous about what Tata Martino is going to do. He has to go try and win this game. Final thoughts before we wrap it up tonight.
It's a litmus test, man. Now we're getting closer and closer to the playoffs, so you want to be able to understand what your team is capable of and what it's not capable of. And trust me, this Inter Miami team is capable of conquering the world if just they're allowed to. So hopefully, come the playoffs, they're allowed to do exactly what they're capable of, and we'll see what happens.
That'll be our next show, right? Is the pregame show? That's going to be an exciting show. I am very excited to get all the nervous energy and get on with you guys and get ready for the biggest game that we've been talking about for the last 3 months. I'm excited. I'm stoked. I am so ready for it. Guys, if you're listening to this on audio, come join us on YouTube only for that pregame show 1 hour before kickoff, to get all the nerves out, to get all the excitement out, to get ready for the game. We will be back then. But until then, this was the Dry Pink Dialogue. I'm Scotty. This is Saur. I hope you guys have a wonderful week. Let's go, Herons. See you guys next time.